now that we have the fan housing off, this is basically going to be the start of how to replace your oil cooler on a Type 2 pancake style engine. This is my 1977 Westfalia Type 2 bus. Has a pancake engine, and I couldn't find any videos on how to replace the oil cooler. So step one to replacing the oil cooler, which I just spent a whole bunch of time doing, was taking the fan housing off. So you can watch my video on taking the fan housing off. You can see we have a bunch of pieces and parts here we need to clean up. So we come in here after taking the fan housing off, inspecting our oil cooler. Looks like there's a lot of crud up in there. Oh, what do you know? Actually, if we come in here, there is a extra spark plug chilling right there. So if we come in here and look, this side looks alright. We're gonna go ahead and change it out, clean everything up in the process. Alright, so I took the old oil cooler out. You can see pretty dirty up top. We have these little gaskets that were in there, but they're actually not bad. Let's compare them to the new one. Old washer or sealer, new one. You know, these actually don't look that bad, so I'm assuming that we have a failed oil cooler. Alright, so here we have the new oil cooler. It's a good idea to, when you get new parts, compare them. It's probably a good idea to go in here and clean up everything before we attempt to install this new one. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it all up. Alright, so I got the oil cooler installed. Did run into some issues. The aftermarket cooler here must be like literally like some millimeters and size difference compared to this one. I was having some issues fitting it on due to this bolt here being in the way. I ended up taking the bolt off and putting it on, and then managing to get the bolt on using the space that's in there. So if you can see that, we got new washers on the drain bolt here. Also, I went ahead and cleaned this up. Was seeing a little bit of leakage coming from the side here. I'm gonna go ahead and start reassembling everything so we can at least start the engine and check for leaks before we go ahead and deal with the exhaust and heater boxes. Alright, so I went ahead and put the exhaust manifold back on. We put the crankshaft with pulley back on. We even put the alternator back on, and the belt is fairly tight. I think it'll work. At this point, I'm pretty sure everything is good to go, so I'm gonna go ahead and go for that first test start. Alright guys, so now I have an idea about the engine. It's running pretty good now. I had a leak where the dipstick goes down into the engine. There's a rubber connection behind the fan housing, and when I installed the fan housing I crushed it. So I had to fix that. I did a little ghetto sealer, rubber sealer in the meantime until I can fix that, but that should be an easy fix. Okay, so I went ahead and put some Loctite on these 3 bolts, and went ahead and tightened up everything again. This is nice and tight. I also went ahead, see that? I've had this air filter cleaner lying around, so I finally just put that on. Figured, you know, we got some clean air going in there. So also I think my battery is not looking too hot because it doesn't want to really turn over without the battery pack. It turns over a little bit, but the battery pack starts right up. So we're gonna go ahead and run the engine. I am fairly confident that actually we fixed the oil leak through the new oil cooler. I've run the engine a little bit. Nothing seems to be going wrong so far. Fingers crossed. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the engine and let it warm up. Just let it run for as long as it needs to get warm, and then we can go ahead with reassembling all that. So let's start the engine up. Also, the engine doesn't really want to stay idling. Once it gets going, it'll go for about 30 seconds and then it'll kind of put out. So I'm going to try and see if we can get that to stay at a nice even idle, but I really just want to warm up the engine, make sure there's no leaks coming from the oil cooler. But like I said, I think we are good. Not want to stay on without any gas. Interesting. Alright, well, although didn't really manage to get the engine to stay going without a little bit of gas, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have to adjust the carburetor, or maybe because of the new air filter the amount of air is slightly restricted compared to before. I don't really know, but the engine starts with the jumper pack. Just doesn't stay going for very long without any gas. So I did manage to run it though. The oil cooler itself is not leaking, so that was our main goal. Now that the oil cooler is fixed, there's a few other little parts underneath have a little bit of minor drippage, but the oil cooler was dripping like consistently quite a bit of oil. So now that that's fixed, can kind of tend to the little stuff. Probably gonna end up putting the engine tins on, and then we'll move on to the exhaust. I'm going to clean up the heater boxes and paint and clean up the exhaust and muffler. Also might end up painting the boxes too. We'll see. But yeah, and then also it's going to be a fun welding project. So that'll be my first time welding. One of the heater boxes broke. So anyway, thanks for watching, and there will be more. So stay tuned.